Welcome to Modern Entrepreneur. Today we have Steve Hartert, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at JotForm. He's had more than 30 years of B2B and B2C marketing management experience. Prior to JotForm, he was the president of Hartert & Associates, which is a marketing consultancy that worked with B2B and B2C companies. And he's been actively involved with marketing internet companies since 1995. Was there an internet back then? Steve holds a bachelor's degree from Cal Poly Pomona and an MBA from Cal State San Bernardino. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for letting me be here.
So JotForm, we at Ontraport think we've been around for a long time, but JotForm, I think you guys might have beat us to the punch. When was that business started?
2006.
So you've been at it for 12 years.
Yeah.
12 years at JotForm,
13.
and it's now over 100 people. You were just saying before we started rolling that you're in every country in the world. Right. And how many languages?
18 different languages.
18 different languages. A lot of stuff to handle as a marketing officer.
Yes.
But you've had a much longer career than the one you've had at JotForm. If you could, go back to give your younger self a piece of advice. What do you think that would be?
I would say probably look more at understand the finance end of things a lot stronger. I mean, I've picked it up as my career has gone on, but in the early days, I think if I had a better grasp of finance and finance concepts and primarily as it relates to forecasting, it would have been very beneficial back then.
Yeah, tell me more about that. Why so?
Well, I mean, really the world runs around finance, right? It's numbers, and you have to be able to justify marketing. Now, in the early days when I started off, it was just a lot more of a challenge, a lot more difficult to actually prove where your marketing dollars were generating ROI. Yeah. It just wasn't, the tools just were very primitive back then. You know, you would do a survey, you get the results back, and it might be 6 months. Well, if you're looking now, you're talking data from October, November. Yeah. Very outdated. The tools now are much better, so you can actually see how something's working almost in real time. Right. But you have to be able to justify that dollar amount that we're going to spend in marketing to the bean counters in your company. And the better you can do that, the better you can show a dollar spent here is going to generate $1.50 there. The better chance you have of getting that dollar to start off with. The key to it is just really have a good grasp of all of that information and understand how the world of finance works around a business. Not that you're trying to work on Wall Street, but you still need to have an understanding of just how money operates in a business environment. I
totally agree. It's interesting. So many people that do great work even in organizations seem to not have had the exposure to kind of like what's happening in a larger perspective in terms of like what the business, is as an asset, what this thing is that you're growing, how investors are thinking about what you're doing, and how every sort of investment of time that we make and money that we make in a business, it kind of plays into a larger picture, and having that can really kind of inform the way we think about what we're going to do.
It certainly does. Yeah. Because, and again, it comes back down to like what we do at JotForm, right? We take numbers, and since we're on a global scale, we look at how we're doing in the US, we look at how we're doing in the UK, we'll look at how we're doing in Japan, we'll look at how we're doing in Australia. I mean, we look on this global basis, and we can really zero in and say, this is what's working in this particular market, this is what's working in that market. And to be able to have that kind of information at your fingertips and be able to manipulate it is incredible. So that it tells you how to start spending your marketing dollars to start attracting, and you find out where that optimum level is. And so, as I like to explain to people, it's like having this big mixing board, and you just start working the knobs and pushing the levers until you find where is that optimum peak at. Yeah. And anything beyond that's waste, and anything below that, you're not taking advantage of all your opportunities. And so we constantly just readjust that recipe. And once we have that, you start seeing the results really coming in.
Yeah, interesting. So now you're talking specifically about marketing, right? But obviously you're marketing a product. How much does your part of the organization have input on what's actually getting delivered from product?
A tremendous amount, actually, because part of our job is to talk to current customers and provide feedback as far as functionality, what they like about it, what they wish we could do better. hidden features they may not be aware of, those kinds of things. The other side is we look at and we talk to non-customers and we find out, what would it take to get you to come on board? Is there a feature? Is there a price point? Is there some compatibility issue, maybe an integration with another product that we're not aware of? And so we bring these pieces to the table and you start snapping this thing together and you look at it and say, okay, the interface needs to be brought up to snuff for mobile.
Yeah.
Right. For example, we just released back in February a product we call Cards, which it gives you you can do forms like one at a time, but instead of having like the long form, you can actually do one question at a time on a form. But it really, on a mobile platform, they're perfect because you can't scroll this long form. But on a phone, you fill it out, you move, you swipe, fill it out, swipe, fill it out, swipe.
Yeah.
That's direct feedback from our customer base that said we want something that's going to be a lot more mobile friendly.
Sure.
And that's what we did on that.
So it seems to me that in marketing, when you're talking about things like investing in SEO, which is largely an investment of time, or in advertising, you do have this sort of mixing board experience where you can really push the levers and get instant feedback. But when you're talking about product investments, you're guessing a lot more, right? Like it's hard. To me, it seems challenging to justify an investment in advance for can be a huge investment in engineering time to create a feature, and you're hoping that people like it and that it actually moves the needle on the business. So how do you think about making that justification in a kind of like financial way?
Yeah, I mean, what we do is, again, we get dozens, hundreds of feature requests every year, and we chart them all, we map them all out. And we look at them and say, okay, which ones seem to be the most popular? Which ones do we think we can also engineer and make it happen? And so you'll start off with this laundry list of different features that people would want to have.
Yeah.
And when you start to whittle it down as far as, okay, how much time is going to be involved to create this? What technology is there? If we're chasing the puck, it's going to take us 8 months to develop this, and when we get there, this is what we're going to have. So, these 2 points might meet up. But you have to look at it in terms of engineering dollars spent, and then appeal to the consumer. Well, our user base is B2B.
Sure.
And so it's a little bit of science, a little bit of art.
Yeah.
And so for us, it's this constant back and forth to see how this is all going to work. And so we might start off with, say, 100 requests, and it comes down to 5. And that's all we're going to focus on for the year, is get these 5 things done and get them done right. Because again, there's only so many hours in a day. And so it means there's only so much engineering time we have for developing it.
Yep.
And by the time we develop it, test it, refine it, and go back again, you might be 3 months into something.
Sure.
Well, now you've got 9 months left in that year. You do that, you can only do 4.
Yeah.
And that's really what it takes.
So what do you feel like your unique skill set is?
For me, I think it's really on the strategic plan, is being able to look at something from that 100,000 foot level and then look back down it on that granular level and understand if we want to get someplace in a year from now, what's it going to take for us to get there, not only from a marketing perspective, but from a business perspective. And to kind of identify each step along the way of how we're going to get there. It's funny because I mentioned I should have been more in the finance world. I've had a number of people say I probably should have gone into the accounting and finance side, because marketers sometimes dream big, but they don't look at the grains. I look at it and say, this is where we want to go. This is that big dream, but what steps are involved at each way? What do we have to do at each step? And what's it going to cost on each step? Yeah. And I think that's something that's just kind of unique to just how my brain is wired.
We talked about this right before we started rolling, but tell me again, what's working at JotForm right now to drive business?
We have a tremendous amount of our user base comes in from our SEO activity. We find that works really, really, really strong for us. We do a lot of AdWords, or a lot of online advertising. We do a mix of AdWords. We do some Facebook ads and some Bing ads and things like that. We find that works really good. We also have a lot of good content that we create. We have case studies we produce for YouTube and PR activities, things like that. But that only takes you so far, right? I mean, you still have to have a compelling product. You can drive business to the door, and that's what all this SEO activity does, and this is what all the advertising activity does. Yeah. But if you don't have a compelling product for someone to sign up, they're going to come to the door and turn away. Yeah. And so we're bringing them in and we're getting them to sign up for the product, and we have a freemium model. Yeah. Right? So low risk, they can sign up, they can test it, and they can go to our paid levels if that's what they want to do. Yeah. And we're finding that works out very well for us. So it's low risk for a user, to come on board. And then once they find the value of it, they can start to move up. And it comes down to, we found a statistic, I want to say it's probably around Christmas time, 90% of the people fill out a form, at least one form once a week somewhere on the internet. When you start multiplying that population base out, and suddenly you look at this as total size of market, just about everybody on the internet's filling out some type of a form at least once a week. Well, we're the ones that provide the forms.
Yeah.
Right, so for us, these are helping companies develop better data, developing smarter business decisions. It's not just, oh, it's a contact form, it's a way to actually communicate business to their customer base, and we're providing that channel of how to do it.
Sure. So you were mentioning that SEO is a big part of what's working for you right now, and I think when most people think about SEO, they think about getting your meta tags right, or your titles of your articles or whatever. But I think you were saying it's really about doing it right. So what is it? You guys are maybe somewhat uniquely do a lot of your SEO in-house, and most companies tend to farm that out, but you guys are doing it in-house. What does it look like to do SEO on a day-to-day level? What does that work entail?
Well, I mean, a lot of it, you mentioned, we get our tags right, we get our title tags right, we get that part of it is you get nailed down to start with.
Yeah.
But then it's also the content that's going to be on that individual web page. It's got to be relevant to everything else that's mentioning in the meta tags or even in title tag. You try to make sure you're using the right types of terminology. And this is where we look at what phrases people are using to find us, what phrases are they looking at just in general. And so you try to structure copy around that because that's what the search engines are going to be looking for. Now, it's not to say you write the copy for an audience of one, which would be a Google algorithm. You can't do that because if you do that, it's very awkward, it doesn't read right. So you have to take this blend of marketing and advertising speak and then kind of merge it with this technical component. And you find yourself using very succinct kinds of phrasing, you have to be very specific types of phrasing, but you still have to describe your product, right? So it's this marriage of, you're kind of going back and forth on it to make sure that you've got this material correct. And you put the relevant terms in the proper perspective on the page. Sometimes you put them further up in the copy, things like that, but you have to make it relevant to what's happening. And the other side is you want to make sure if somebody's linking to you from the outside, you want to make sure that that's a quality source coming back, because the Google algorithm is this gigantic thing, but you don't want to have click farms overseas that are just sending you that because Google can penalize you for that kind of stuff. So the key is have good relevant content on your page that actually has something to do with your business, and then you want to have good scoring companies on the other side pointing back to you with links and such like that.
So you guys are doing actual link building on a day-to-day basis. You have people in your business that are emailing or calling up potential partners or content generators and saying, hey, would you promote this article that we just posted, or something like that?
That's a real small part of it. We also have a lot of partnerships that we work with, and they might send out something in their newsletter, they might put something and then put a blog on their website that describes a partnership and integration that we have with them. So that's a bit of it. We do a little bit of the, hey, we want to get some link coming back to us, but I mean, it's such a small part of it.
Link building is not really the game anymore.
Not in that sense of it. It really comes back to having as a partnership, because there's got to be something that's of kind of a real valid type of a link. There's got to be a real natural link to it. So for example, we have links with, we have integrations with Salesforce and things like Zapier and those kinds of organizations. So they will highlight it on their website that says, yes, we integrate with JotForm. And then that link, because of the weight that a Salesforce or somebody else might carry, comes back, and they're linking back to our website. That pushes your SEO value up.
Gotcha. And so you got people internally that are making sure those links are happening,
right?
And and they're pointing to the right pages and stuff like that.
Example, just to give it, the other day we had an article that was published about us, and they mentioned us, but they didn't put a link into the document. They said JotForm this, but there was no link back. So we called them up and said, hey, article's great, but when you mention us, the first reference, can you just put a link back to JotForm? They said, oh yeah, no problem. And they do that, and then that helps us out.
Sure.
And then, we reference back to them because we'll put it in our news feed and things like that.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Perfect. So what is kind of the cutting edge for you right now? What are you learning? What do you feel like is the new next mountain to climb?
I think from a pure marketing perspective, it's getting your hands around AI and how that's going to impact marketing. There's a lot of different things that people are talking about, what it can and cannot do. Some are quite mundane, to some are downright scary. But it's trying to get ahead of that curve and understand how those metrics are going to be coming in and how you manipulate the metrics to make them work for you. How do you interpret those metrics and make it work for you?
Yeah.
And it's just, there's so much data is coming in all the time now. There's the big thing about big data. And it's true. There's things you're measuring that you never thought you would ever measure before. And it's understanding what should you really be measuring and what is just background noise.
Yeah.
And that's because it can be measured, doesn't mean it should be measured. And so for me, it's just trying to keep focus on what's important for the marketing perspective, what's also important then for the bottom line, and the rest of it just becomes, oh, these are nice to haves, and you want to look at that kind of stuff.
Can you think of a specific way that AI is going to make a difference to marketers in the very short-term future?
I think a lot of it's going to be just in some of the auto-responding. From marketing and automation point of view, there's a lot of talk about, well, it can then digest and build an email and send an email back to somebody.
So actually automatically generated content.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the way it's been structured now is you'll have content you've created, and then based on several keywords, that it will send back the appropriate one. But I've seen demos of things and of various success. Well, they'll actually take what somebody's asking and then write up content and send that back, and some of it's better than others, but it's still, it misses that human touch.
Yeah.
But I could see that, give it a couple of years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, as the technology gets better and more refined.
Yeah.
That kind of material actually could be fairly common.
Yeah. It does seem like it's a minute away, though.
Yeah, it does, but everybody wants to sell it as a minute away, but it's really, it's a lot farther down the road.
Exactly. So you've been at this quite a long time. You had your own agency. Right. You've been working with a significant player in the San Francisco tech scene now for several years. When you think back on your career, what would you like your legacy to be?
Business is like a puzzle, right? I mean, there's operations, there's finance, there's marketing, there's sales, there's all the different pieces, and all of them have to work together. As I tell people, from a marketing perspective, I can drive the business to your doorstep, but if you're not prepared for it, you're going to get angry people on both sides of the door. The internal people are going to be upset because you sent them too much business and they couldn't handle it. They weren't geared up for it. And then you're also going to have angry customers because we came and there was nobody there to help us out.
Yeah.
And so it's understanding how both sides of that equation work.
Yeah.
And by having that grasp of it and understanding that, I think is where I would like if people say, down the road when I'm 6 feet under, is they would say, yeah, he got that. He understood how this all worked out.
Cool. So what do you think it means to be a modern entrepreneur?
I think being a modern entrepreneur means you got to stay focused. I think it's like any other kind of entrepreneur, even back 20, 30, 40 years ago, you need to stay focused. It's very easy to get distracted by something shiny. I see this all the time where this is what we're going to do. And then something happens and they veer off to there. And it may not have anything to do with their business, and they got distracted because that's what got all the buzz. I think being an entrepreneur really comes down to focus, keep refining your product, talk to your customers, find out what they like, what they don't like, and really build that best product you can buy. Because if you allow yourself to go whatever's hot and fancy and new and getting all this, you're getting the headlines, you're probably going to walk yourself down into a dead end.
Do you think it's true that the best product wins? No,
I don't think that's true at all. I think sometimes it comes down to which ones can be marketed better, which ones can be pushed out the door faster. I think sometimes in the long run, I think sometimes the better product will win. But I think by and large, it necessarily doesn't. And I mean, I can cite a couple of examples of that. They're a little more old school, but I mean, it is true. The best product doesn't always win.
So if that's the case, then should we not be focused more on marketing than on product?
Well, it's a mix, right? Because you want to constantly be talking to your customer base to find out what it is they want. But unless your product is solid,
Yeah.
It's going to collapse the minute the customers start to work with it. You know,
Yeah.
It's kind of like building a table, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can build this great tabletop,
Yeah.
but if the legs can't sustain it, the whole thing is going to fall down on you.
Yeah.
And so you've got to keep a good, solid product because, you know, you may, and what you're saying is, right, you could get customers to come to your door and you've got this kind of half-baked product.
Yeah.
They come, they try it, it falls apart underneath them.
Yeah.
They're done. They're
Yeah.
gone. They're
Yeah.
not coming back.
Right.
And so now you've ruined the second round of purchases from them, but also then word of mouth goes around and now your reputation is shot.
Yeah.
And that's why you've got to have a good, solid product. Not that it's going to be the final product at the end of the day, because everything evolves, because you build something,
Yeah.
you get customer feedback,
Yeah.
you build a little bit more, and you keep adding to it as it goes down the line.
Sure.
I mean, every software, every car, everything has changed. To go back, I mean, look at just how Windows or Mac or Word or any of these things, look at the browsers in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
How they've changed as far as technology and user demand. Look at vehicles, I mean, look at houses, look at clothes, all these things, right?
Yeah.
They all change, but as a modicum of customer feedback mixed in with building something. And when you can do both of those things, you'll both progress up the ladder.
Yeah. So having great products and great marketing is the name of the game.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Great. Well, hey, thank you so much for being here. It's been a
My
pleasure.
pleasure.
Would you do us the favor of signing our wall?
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you.